Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies, and this time around I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to talk about titles of films because titles in films are incredibly important. There can be really good ones.
Barbarella psychedelic.
There can be really bad ones. And I'm going to give you the 10 of each that I consider the 10 best and the 10 worst titles of movies. Now, again, this is a movable feast. If you ask me a week from now, I'm going to give you 10 different ones in each category. But for now, these are the 10 best and the 10 worst movie titles that I could think of this morning. We'll start with the best ones because we want to build up to a climax here. And the first one I've got for you is one of two that are movies written and directed by the wonderful Samuel Fuller. And the one I'm going to start with is The Naked Kiss from 1964, which is a neo-noir melodrama according to Wikipedia. It's really great. It stars Constance Towers, Anthony Isley, Virginia Gray, Patsy Kelly. And it's about a sex worker who quits being a sex worker, moves to another town, and has an assignation with the police chief who tells her to get out of town, but she doesn't. Instead, she becomes a nurse in a hospital for children with disabilities. The movie gets on into a melodramatic climax, and it also starts with a killer beginning, which surprised everybody in 1964. But to get back to the title, The Naked Kiss is the kiss that Kelly, played by Constance Towers, has with the man she plans to marry. And there's something off about his kiss. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want to do a full review. But The Naked Kiss has a really strong meaning in this movie. And the meaning is a very, very, very dark one. So the title is there. Once you've seen the movie, the title lands even more heavily. So that's the first one. It's a highly recommended movie. It's just one of the best movies that Samuel Fuller ever did. The second one I've got for you from Samuel Fuller is Shock Corridor from 1963, the movie he did immediately before The Naked Kiss. And it stars Peter Breck. It's also got Constance Towers in it again, Gene Evans and James Best. It's about an ambitious journalist who decides he's going to go undercover in a mental asylum. And what he finds there is a microcosm of everything that's wrong with America in the 1960s. Not going to do spoilers again. It is a very melodramatic film and a very heavy one. And The Shock Corridor is him making that transition from pretending to be mentally ill to genuinely being mentally ill. As the story continues. Again, I want to do a full video on this one, so I won't talk too much about it. But Shock Corridor has a really interesting physical manifestation as the character Johnny transitions from faking it to making it in the worst possible way. And that is a powerful and also very symbolic meaning. And so Shock Corridor as a title, like The Naked Kiss, lands really heavily and does its job incredibly well. There's so many movies that have titles that you kind of go, what was that movie about this? But when you think of Shock Corridor, you're going to think of Shock Corridor. And all credit to the wonderful Samuel Fuller for that. Next up, we're going to go into the wonderfulness of 1980s horror films with C.H.U.D, the 1984 horror movie, which has John Goodman in it, John Hurd's in it as well. If you haven't seen C.H.U.D, you should really check it out. And C.H.U.D is a great title because it's an acronym. Cannibalistic Humanoid Underground Dweller. And the C.H.U.Ds are pretty good. There was even a sequel to this one, C.H.U.D 2, Bud the C.H.U.D. The title has had a long tail to it as well. C.H.U.D, if you look it up in Urban Dictionary, has about 15 different meanings. None of them is good. They go from cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers to conservative, homophobic and transphobic Republicans. C.H.U.D is a movie title which has taken on its own meaning in a broader cultural context. So you gotta love it for that. So number 3 is C.H.U.D. Let me know if you want me to review the movie because I've got the urge to watch it again. Number 4, while we're on horror, we're going to go to 2013 for Big Ass Spider, which was a science fiction action film directed by Mike Mendez, which stars Greg Grunberg and Lin Shaye, Patrick Balchow. Basically, it's about an exterminator who goes after a really, really, really big spider. I like that simplicity and that clear through line you get with a title like Big Ass Spider. You know what it's going to be about. You know what it's going to be like. and you just buckle up and enjoy the ride. It's a very clear signal to the audience or potential audience that this is a certain type of movie that you will enjoy if you enjoyed certain types of movies. And it's pretty damn good. I enjoyed it when I watched it. I'll enjoy it whenever I watch it again. And I do believe I've got it on DVD somewhere in the back room. Number 4, we've got a movie that's just been released by Imprint on Blu-ray here in Australia. And it is a 1966 crime film, Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round, with James Coburn, and it's got the other wonderfulness about it that is Harrison Ford's first film role, where he plays a bellboy. Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round is hilarious as a title because the horses are locked onto a merry-go-round. So having a dead heat on a merry-go-round is a weird kind of title. And in the context of the movie where the lead character, played by James Coburn, is pretending to be a writer, the title he comes up with for the book he never intends to write because he's actually conning the woman he's living with is Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round. And so that, of course, ends up being the title of the movie. It's striking, and it kind of instills a certain curiosity in a potential audience. What the hell does that mean is the first thing you'd think about. But it's a very 1960s title. It's kind of like a dandy in aspic. It's one of those kind of titles where you wonder what the hell it's about. And once you watch the movie in context, you understand what it's about. So Dead Heat on a Merry-Go-Round is the next one up. Then we're going to a movie based on a Chester Himes novel, which is where the movie got its title. From 1970, a neo-noir action comedy which was right at the forefront of what later became blaxploitation, and as Cotton Comes to Harlem, with Godfrey Cambridge, Ramus Jakes and Red Fox. People say it's probably the first movie in blaxploitation, but there were a couple of others like Sweetback's Badass Song and maybe Uptight, Jules de Sins movie. Cotton Comes to Harlem has such a deep cultural context for American black people, and particularly urban American black people, whose ancestors fled the South and fled slavery and cotton plantations to live in a more industrialized area where they were freer and had the opportunity to work. And the idea of cotton in Harlem has a really strong cultural context, particularly in mid-20th century urban black society. I kind of like that. Also like the movie. I read the novels by Chester Himes, the Coffinette and Gravedigger novels, which I highly recommend you take a look at. Really good, strong crime novels from the 1950s. And the two lead characters are tough bastards. There was a sequel called Come Back Charleston Blue, which doesn't have the same cachet as a title. Good, solid movie title, and one that I recommend you check out if you possibly can. Now we're going to the bottom of the barrel for the next one, and it's one that middle-aged geek girl really loves. Sharknado, a shark tornado. It's there on the cover. You know it's not going to be a great movie. You know it's not going to be Citizen Kane. It's not going to be Rules of the Game. It's not going to be Tokyo Story. It's going to be a movie where there are sharks in a tornado. Again, it's got that clean through line, which tells an audience this may be your kind of movie. If it is, watch it. If it's not, go and watch something else. But Sharknado's got a weird clarity as a title that I really, really appreciate. Of course, there were any number of sequels. I think there were 6, if I'm correct. And from 2013 to about 2020, it became an annual cultural phenomenon for a certain kind of audience. And I kind of liked that. The special effects were ropey. Everything about it was kind of low rent. But that title really upset some people, but delighted others. And that duality is part of the fun of that title. Next one's a 1963 Japanese Yakuza movie starring the wonderful Joe Shishido, and it's Detective Bureau 23 Go to Hell Bastards. That is a great title. It's also called in other markets Detective Bureau 23 Down with the Wicked, but Detective Bureau 23 Go to Hell Bastards is a tough title, and it is a tough action film with the police going up against the Yakuza. There's lots of shooting, there's lots of 1960s Japanese nightclub action, which I always appreciate in Showa-era Japanese crime films. I love taking a look at the nightclubs they have and the kind of sleazy back streets and things like that. And it was directed by the wonderful Seijun Suzuki, who also did Branded to Kill with Joe Shishido as well. Good, solid title, good genre to explore if you want it. Those Japanese crime films of the 1960s have a lot of meat on the bone for people who like, say, film noir or other crime movies. It's definitely a pool to dive into. And that title is just chef's kiss wonderful. The next one's a movie I haven't seen, but I like the title. 1995 black comedy and psychological horror film, Headless Body in a Topless Bar. Now, I know very little about the movie. I do know that the title came from a headline in an actual newspaper, the New York Post, in 1983. So the title came from a newspaper headline that reported an actual crime in 1983. It's got something kind of sensational about it and something weird, and it's one of those titles that makes you lean into, maybe I'll watch this film, and maybe this film will be a lot of fun for me. I'm really going to have to watch the film now, I think. But Headless Body in a Topless Bar is a killer title for a certain kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek crime film, and I appreciate it for that. Next one I've got for you is an Agnes Varda film from 1962. I've talked about it a little bit on the channel before. Cleo From 5 to 7. And it's about a young woman who is a pop star in Paris. And it's the time between 5 and 7 p.m. on an afternoon. She's doing some work. She's wandering around. She visits a lover. She goes through a park and other things, all while she's waiting to find out whether she has cancer or not. It's a wonderful film, and that title says it all. It's about Cleo, and it's between these certain hours in the afternoon/evening. And that, again, there's a clarity to that and a uniqueness to that. It's not a title that is kind of lyrical or poetic or an oblique analogy or anything like that. It's very precise and very focused, and it's the hook upon which a very good film is hung. So I like that title a lot, and I recommend you see the movie. If you haven't seen Cleo From 5 to 7, you should. Now let's get on to the bad titles. Now again, this is crazily subjective, and we're going to have some disagreement about this, but that's kind of okay. So let's get the ball rolling with another Japanese crime film, which is a bit weird. And it's called Super Gun Lady Police Branch 82 from 1979. And it's kind of slightly a pinku film, which is a kind of soft erotic film. And I haven't seen it, but I like the poster for it. And so I thought I'd add it, but it's still one of those titles that loses something in translation. But either way, I don't think it's a particularly good title. It's still a kind of intriguing movie in spite of that title. It's a bit kind of like it's trying too hard to be something that it may be or it may not be, but it's trying too hard. So that's the first one I got for you. The second one is a surrealist folk horror film, according to Wikipedia, from 1977. It's an American movie called Deathbed, The Bed That Eats. And it's the only feature film directed by a guy called George Barry. And it's about a bed that basically eats people. In 1897, it says, a demon fell in love with a woman and conjured up a bed on which to make love with her. The woman died during the act, and so the demon wept blood, and the bed became a bed that eats people who lay on it. High concept. It's one of those movies where you hear the title and you're either going to go, yeah, I like this movie, or no, this is not for me. I don't think The Bed That Eats is a good coda to the title. Just call it Deathbed and have done with it. That bit after the colon is really unnecessary, which is what makes it a bad title. I've seen the movie a long time ago. Yeah, it's a bed that eats. Not a great production, not great production values. That second part of the title really lands flat for me. Now, the next one is by the wonderful Ray Dennis Steckler, and I saw this movie on late night TV when I was quite young. And as you may have guessed already, it's the incredibly strange creatures who stopped living and became mixed up zombies. Why he didn't call it mixed up zombies is something we'll never know. I don't mind the movie. Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's got bad makeup in it. The song and dance numbers and the carnival scenes are incredibly sleazy. But it goes back to that principle of mine that really long titles in movies don't work. You've got to have something punchy. And then for me, this kind of title just doesn't work. And having said that, I've got another one of those kind of titles, which is a black comedy directed by Richard Quine, based on a play which had an even longer name. The movie's title is Oh Dad, Poor Dad, Mama's Hung You in the Closet and I'm Feeling So Sad, which rhymes at least. It stars Rosalind Russell and Robert Morse, and Barbara Harris. Jonathan Winters is in it as well. Lionel Jeffries is in it, but it's a bad movie and the title is just too long. But if you want to get the title of the original play from 1962 by Arthur L. Coppett, the title is Oh Dad, Poor Dad, Mama's Hung You in the Closet and I'm Feeling So Sad, a pseudo-classical tragedy farce in a bastard French tradition. You're kind of glad they cut the title in half there, but still, it's way too long and it's pretentious, and the movie was not successful. It was shelved for re-editing and shooting additional scenes after it previewed really badly in 1965, but it still wasn't a success at all. And it's got a theme song which grates on your nerves when you hear it. I'm not even going to play any of it for you, but if you want to watch this movie, just be aware that the theme song is going to piss you off. Next victim is a 2006 spoof film, originally titled Blood and Guts, which again, it's a bit prosaic, but it probably says what it needed to say. And it's called Stupid Teenagers Must Die, which is a little harsh. I haven't seen the film. I kind of like the title, but I hate it as well. I think that it's a kind of lazy title, particularly given it's got an exclamation mark on the end of it. I don't know much about the film, but I kind of dislike the title instinctively because it sounds like an old fart yelling. And as somebody who tries desperately, in spite of my advanced years, not to be an old fart, I don't like titles that sound like old farts complaining. And Stupid Teenagers Must Die does. The next one's a 1954 comedy romance that has Jack Lemmon, Jack Carson, Kim Novak and Judy Holliday in it, written by George Axelrod and directed by Mark Robson, so it's got a pretty good provenance. And the title is Phffft. It may well be the first American movie title that doesn't have a vowel in it. Again, it's one of those ones that's pretentious and draws attention to itself, doesn't start many conversations about the film. Like, what movie did you go to see? Yeah, well, what movie did you go and see? Really, probably wasn't a success as far as I can tell. Let me have a look. It did get a BAFTA nomination for Judy Holliday, and it was nominated for the Best Written American Comedy in the Writers Guild of America. But it's one of those movies that's had zero cultural impact since then, and the title is lame as hell, and I don't like it at all. I probably won't see the movie just based on the title, which shows you that it is a bad title. Next up, I'm going for an American action film from 1956, which means people probably smoked a lot in it. Filmed in the Philippines, stars George Montgomery, Mona Freeman and James Bell, and it is Huck, H-U-K, which is about the Huck Rebellion in the Philippines. Now, if you want to find out about the Huck Balahup Rebellion in 1942, during the Japanese occupation of the Philippines, you can look that up yourself on Wikipedia because I'm not going to. But the idea of a movie called Huck, which is not about Huck Finn, is kind of weird. It's got a pretty good poster. I don't mind some of the posters with machete-wielding guys on them. I mean, I always like a good machete in a movie poster. The title Huck just doesn't do it. It's one syllable. Unless you know the cultural context of it, it means absolutely zip. And so it's a bad movie title for that reason. Got two more for you. And one of the movies has got Joe Pesci in it, so I'm not that keen on it. 1997 black comedy, which is one of those movies that tries to emulate the quirky wonderfulness of Pulp Fiction. 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, which for me, it's just trying too hard again. It's one of those titles that really tries to get your attention and you go, okay, here, 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, big deal. Not that great. 7 Psychopaths I can buy. 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag I can't buy. Who directed it? Tom Schulman, which is a directorial debut of a screenwriter who wrote Dead Poets Society. He went from Dead Poets Society, a very well regarded movie, to 8 Heads in a Duffel Bag, which shows the arc of the guy's career. Don't like it. Think it tries too hard. Not really my kind of thing. Now, the last bad title I've got for you is a movie that got real good reviews. It's a 2014 American science fiction action film starring Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, Bill Paxton, and Brendan Gleeson. Edge of Tomorrow, which is a null title. It's very generic. What is Edge of Tomorrow? Is it today? Is it later on today? Is it 11:30 p.m.? It's one of those weird titles that has nothing to do with the time loop plot of the movie and is just supposed to look good on a poster. In some countries it's known as Live, Die, Repeat, Edge of Tomorrow, which gives you a little more context, but still it's achingly generic and just doesn't do anything for me. I didn't particularly like the movie because I think Tom Cruise was miscast in it, but I didn't mind Emily Blunt in it. Bill Paxton, of course, is great. Brendan Gleeson is always great. It was directed by Doug Liman, who had also made Swingers and Mr. and Mrs. Smith and American Made with Tom Cruise in 2017. But Edge of Tomorrow is just one of those movies that the title doesn't work. There's a better movie that has a very similar title from the 1950s called Edge of Eternity, which is much better because in context it actually means something. But Edge of Tomorrow, bland as hell as a title, just doesn't work. So that's it. There are my 10 good movie titles, my 10 bad movie titles. I think that there's some lessons there for anybody who wants to write a movie. Find a really good title that once people have seen the film, it works, even if they don't understand it before they go into it. And even if it does draw them in, promise and deliver on what you promise with that title. Deliver what you promise with the title, basically. It was a bit of fun getting these together. I found some movies that I didn't know about while I was researching, which is always a good thing for me. And again, the title, and like the poster, is important. It's one of the lures that gets people into a cinema or gets you to click onto the screen. It's one of those things that the algorithm isn't necessarily going to help you with, but your own curiosity and the skill with which the title is created will make a difference. That's it for this time around. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can also support the channel by becoming a channel member, or you can become a patron at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Next video up is Science Fiction Saturday again, and I'll probably grab some 1950s science fiction movies again to analyse and have a bit of fun with. And until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some movies with good titles, don't necessarily watch some movies with bad titles, and I'll catch you next time.